Fishlift, the recovery of an Ichthyosaur, is made possible by a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture.
A U.S. Army CH-47 Chinook helicopter flies over the forests of interior Alaska. Its mission is to fly to one of the most inhospitable places in Alaska, the northwest slope of the Brooks Range. There are no forests here, no people, just low-lying brush and an endless expanse of Arctic tundra. In the brief summer months, the temperature can reach into the 70s one day and have snow falling the next. The crew of the Chinooks are searching for something that died here 220 million years ago, a relic of the Cretaceous period, the fossilized remains of an Ichthyosaur. In 1950, U.S. Geological Survey geologists discovered the rock formation holding the Ichthyosaur. The area was mapped and visited over the years, but its remoteness and lack of a suitable landing area prevented it from being removed. The aircraft flight line at Fort Wainwright, a U.S. Army post just outside of Fairbanks. Soldiers from B Company, 4th Battalion, 123rd Aviation have their rucksacks packed and loaded aboard the massive Chinook helicopters. In an unusual cooperation effort, the Army had graciously agreed to a request from the University of Alaska Museum in Fairbanks to fly to the site on the North Slope and retrieve the Ichthyosaur specimen. The University Museum team arrives and loads their tools and supplies on the helicopters. Not long after, they are cruising above the vast forests of interior Alaska. Their route will take them 350 miles northwest of Fairbanks. Due to a limited range, the Chinooks must refuel. 175 miles into the flight, they land in the small community of Bettles at the south base of the Brooks Range. This gives the passengers and crew a chance to stretch their legs. Dr. Roland Gangloff of the University of Alaska Museum is spearheading the expedition to the Ichthyosaur site.
We've equipped ourselves with just about everything we can imagine from our experience to make sure that when we're out there, we have a good chance of getting a good recovery. We will recover something, we know that, and we should find it. I can't believe it's going to be that difficult to find from everything we've got as far as air photos and maps and photographs from our colleagues that have been out there.
After refueling the Chinooks, they are once again airborne, flying through the Brooks Range another 175 miles to a point called Cutaway Creek. Once on the ground, Special Projects Assistant Kevin May begins to scope out the area to locate the rock formation holding the Ichthyosaur.
That looks like it, but our aerial photos are off. Our map position's off. We're gonna walk over there. That looks like it there, though. Sure,
well, if that isn't it, I'll eat it. And then the outcrop right there. See that outcrop with the red?
The limestone up there?
Yeah.
Once the team thinks they've spotted the rock formation, they set out to hike the short distance to check if they are correct. The team's suspicions are correct, and they indeed find the rock formation holding the Ichthyosaur.
Right on up in there. Yeah, this is the posterior, the anterior end, and that's the posterior end. Ribs, these are all ribs in here. Well, we can imagine somebody was walking along here looking at the little outcrops and mapping them.
When you're mapping, you look for any good outcrops you can get.
Yeah.
And plus, this is a very good place to get an attitude. Strike and dip of the rocks.
Yeah, they went in here with the compass and measured it. Well, that's great. This is all we could hope for. Instead of it all being laying down here and we picking up.
So if that skull is in there, man, you lucked out. Well, we're really excited because we found it in better shape than we really had thought it might be, and the skull looks like it's covered and been covered for a while, so it may even be in better shape. The site is certainly what we expected. Thank God.
With confirmation that the Ichthyosaur has been found, the expedition begins to unload the supplies and tools off the helicopters. They then set up their tents and settle down for the evening.
So be ready have breakfast finished and ready to go by
In an
8.
effort to better describe to the team what type of dinosaur an ichthyosaur was, Roland briefs the soldiers and museum staff.
Now the ichthyos means fish, and saur means reptile or reptile-like animal. And the ichthyosaurs were about the first experiment with a whale-like, porpoise-like body, swimming organs, and all of the modification of the skeleton that we see later in whales and dolphins. But this will be the first almost fully articulated full body. It means the bones pretty close to one another. That has ever been found in Alaska and in the high latitudes. And for that reason, that's one of the reasons we wanted to get this one.
The team has only 5 days to excavate the fossil from the rock face. Kevin May wastes no time in preserving the rock holding the ichthyosaur.
The bone now has super glue or cyanoacrylate glue on it. And then I just got done putting foam in all the large voids in this rock. And tomorrow our intent is to put a plaster jacket on it, burlap with a burlap-soaked plaster, or plaster-soaked burlap, and make a hard case. And then the day after that, we plan on taking a rock saw and cutting a large chunk of this out and moving it. In here, we've got a series of ribs, all pointing towards the posterior of this animal. So the head would be that way, and the tail would be this way. That's pretty much all you can see right now. We think that there's a good possibility that we're looking at least some ribs from we're looking at the left side here, and we're thinking that we have some of the ribs from the right side showing up on this side, so we may have a fairly compressed specimen. We think that this rock layer is only approximately 8 centimeters thick with the whole specimen within it. Only preparation of this will let us know if that's correct. So we can't see the tail. We can see some other bones back here. But beyond that, we're just going to have to dig this thing out of the rock.
The CH-47 Chinook helicopter is part of the Army's heavy lift capability. It was because of its lifting capability that attracted the University of Alaska Museum, which led the request to the Army for its help in retrieving the ichthyosaur.
Well, I can only express the fact that there's no way we could have mounted this expedition looking for this ichthyosaur without them. It just wouldn't have happened. And it didn't happen for 30 years. So, I mean, if the United States Geological Survey couldn't put the effort out to do it, then with their resources at the time, then it tells you something. So this is the Army support means the difference between doing it and not doing it.
While the help to the museum was invaluable, the Army gained some valuable experience as well.
And for us, training objectives certainly would be, the navigational aspects, some tactical training, some survival training, and just personal training as far as, I think probably just a gut check to say, hey, we did it. We don't get to come out this far every day, and to come out and trust our skills that we've learned in our training, and it served us well.
The morning routines in camp begin with a meal. Army discipline dictates soldiers must shave every day, and a morning shave using ice-cold water from a clear running stream makes this a memorable part of the adventure. Roland Gangloff's morning briefing to the troops tells of how unusually good the weather is and what will need to be done this day.
Hey, enjoy it while we can. It was beautiful last night. These are really memorable times up here. A lot of people will not ever believe you if you tell them this. You had 3 days like this. Today, we got to the point where we really don't need a lot of people all at once. Kevin is starting up on getting the final consolidation, putting polymers into the parts of the specimen that seem the most precarious. One of the things we do need is to have about three of you go over this morning, especially 3 that have waterproof boots or waders or whatever, to go over this morning right after this assembly, and I'll give you set of shears and go over and start cutting up the burlap into the strips?
The plastering process begins with burlap bags cut into strips. Hundreds of these strips will be needed to encase the Ichthyosaur fossil and its rock layer.
We're building a ramp.
Kevin May is tireless in preserving the fossil. He has helped as tirelessly by his 17-year-old daughter Lizzie, already well experienced with fossil excavations in Alaska and general help around camp. As the superglue sets up on the fossil in the warm sunshine, the sound of 3 approaching helicopters in crystal blue skies breaks the relative silence. Three Chinooks take up positions on the hill above the excavation site. This day has been designated as Media Day for the crew. Representatives from Anchorage and Fairbanks television, newspaper, and radio stations descend on the area. Roland Gangloff greets the media and is barraged with questions.
So you get these tails sticking up out of the water sometimes, as opposed to being pulled up like this and slapped down as you would in a whale. And so Gil Mole was very, very helpful in giving us photographs he took.
Once the media is finished with interviews and area shots, the helicopters wind up and depart the valley, heading back to Fort Wainwright. With the media departed, Kevin and Lizzie begin the process of encasing the Ichthyosaur in plaster. The burlap strips are soaked in a fiberglass reinforced type of plaster and laid out over the fossil.
Everybody behind the camera thinks so. What we're trying to do here is get this burlap plaster on here as tight as possible, which isn't always possible to get it perfectly tight, but that'll keep these rocks from shifting inside this jacket.
Plastering the fossil requires few hands, so Roland sets off on a fossil hunting field trip with expedition members. They head off a short distance from camp.
Fascinating.
They find a fossil bed and examine its contents.
If you collected enough of this and did it, preserved it right, you probably could get it down to species. So anytime you can get right up on the top of a ridge and work, boy, it's sure. You're looking at probably at least a 230 million-year-old clam. Just getting a big enough plate to really get some nice full valves would be. Is this where you found it? Oh, up there. Where? Oh. Somehow I thought it was down here. You said the.
By the end of the day, Kevin has the first of a few layers of plaster and burlap covering the Ichthyosaur fossil. In the distance, dark clouds begin moving in. What had been 3 perfect days of warm weather was now replaced by cool temperatures and fog. The wind picks up, rattling the tiny tents. Short-sleeved shirts are covered up by fleece and Gore-Tex. The plastering continues. As Lizzie warms herself by a small campfire, Kevin examines the first layer of plaster and determines it's time for the rock saw to be fired up to cut away the sides of the fossil, to wrap another layer of plaster around a new edge.
You're gonna hit that face with glue?
Yeah, I'm gonna glue it and dig behind it and wrap the jacket around it.
As the debris are removed, they are carefully examined for fossils, then tossed over the side of the hill. The weather system that moved in brings rain. The team quickly covers the Ichthyosaur with a tarp and ties it off to the brush up above the site. The first tarp doesn't cover enough of the site, so another tarp is placed over the fossil.
It's gonna be warm when I crawl into bed. And tonight I'm gonna be out cold instantly.
That's Gangloff.
Well, right now he's crossing the creek in his sandals.
The air temperature continues to fall and the rain keeps coming down. On the morning of the 5th day of the expedition, the team awoke to snow falling. Temperatures that had been in the 70s 2 days before are now in the upper 20s. This had been designated the day of departure to return to Fairbanks.
Well, I'm going to update it 2:30, 14:30 today down south. They're going to try and get a scope on what the weather's like between here and there. And it looks like it's clearing out to the north just as we speak. The goal is to get it finished, you know, get it encased and get it on the airplane. So that's the ultimate goal. But we might have to adjust fire as we go, you know, depending on how their work is coming and depending on the weather. So we don't want to be stuck here. So if they can at least get it preserved, even if it doesn't look like we could take the time to get it all loaded up and everything, if we need to close up camp and go if we have a window of opportunity with the weather, you know. Just have to kind of wait. We're playing the waiting game now.
Kevin is not hampered by the falling snow. He enters data on the excavation into a portable computer. The menacing clouds that brought the snow begin to lift, and clearing skies bring out the sun as temperatures begin to climb.
Yeah, if you could pass the word on to those folks over there, you folks there.
Still protected from lingering flurries, the Ichthyosaur plastering moves on at a rapid pace.
It's gonna definitely happen today. It's gonna happen in a few hours here, as soon as this plaster sets up.
Is this going to be the same kind of operation at KUAC?
If the weather along the flight path to Fairbanks is above minimums for safe travel, the departure schedule for this day will proceed.
Good morning, it's Miss Bridges for weather. Okay. Okay. All right. 4,000 broken. 4,000 broken what? And what clear? Okay. 10-mile viz, okay. Awesome, that sounds great. Good deal, we got 4,000, 10 miles visibility. The Bettles.
But it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Might be going home today.
The decision is made to leave the valley today. The fossil has been plastered and strengthened. One of the CH-47s takes off from the hill above camp and maneuvers over to the excavation site. They set down in a prepared landing zone as close to the Ichthyosaur as possible. Kevin takes a power saw to cut around the plaster jacket. Then the rock base is chipped away.
Duck, Dave.
3 soldiers take up positions above the plaster jacket with pry bars.
I think you can sit there with your... Yeah, so we'll be real gentle, just a touch at a time. Okay. Why don't we get a bunch of people in the middle here? Can we get a couple more people up here?
Get one more.
Ah, that damn radio, what is that? Okay, get those 2x4s back there if you can. Want those to keep the face of this thing. Okay, use the 2x4s as
Where are the
levers.
I could put a
2x4 ain't gonna last too long.
I could put a
Well, it's looking good. Let's get the 2x4s pretty much against the face of it. Get them up against it. Yep. Okay, all you guys, come on down now.
Down in there? Which way is this going? Because I don't have a clue how this works.
Oh. Well, then that's a problem because we need to take this in. What, does that got a loop in it?
Wow.
Okay. Hold this.
little plaster. Plaster.
Made it through.
The plaster encased Ichthyosaur fossil is reinforced and strapped. It is crucial now to have the strength. It is gently turned on its side for a ride down the embankment.
Let it slide through your hands a little bit.
Don't try to hold it all, Kevin.
I'm not holding it all.
Easy. Okay.
Ready? We're just like a sea anchor, man. We're gonna end up going down with it.
We're doing good. Don't stand there. Okay. Slow in. Don't let anybody.
This is the heavy end. It's going faster.
Yeah, let that other end go. Wait, let us pivot from here.
Ride it out, man.
The team must now get the Ichthyosaur from the base of the hill to the helicopter, a distance of less than 100 feet.
Get your fingers out of there. Can you get your fingers under it? 1, 2, 3. What was that? Strap came loose.
The soggy tundra between the fossil and the helicopter would not allow the heavy rock to be dragged across it, but the Army is well experienced at loading helicopters in the field, so they brought along sheets of plywood for just such a situation, and a path was laid. The team gets the Ichthyosaur to the rear of the helicopter, and in they go with it.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. As far as she goes.
Okay.
The hard work has paid off thus far. The crew is happy.
We got far further today than I anticipated we would. We planned on coming back to making a second trip and picking it up next month. We were real fortunate to be able to package the whole thing up and get it on the airplane today, so we don't have to make that second trip.
With the Ichthyosaur successfully loaded in the helicopter, the final task is to erase their excavation ramp.
Transmissions at 18 o'clock. 15.
The helicopters take off from this lonely valley and fly southeast. The excavation crew are now passengers, and they relax as the flight takes them to Bettles for refueling. The helicopters land in Bettles, and the refueling trucks top them off. Word is spread among the community that these Army helicopters are carrying a prehistoric reptile. Local children and their parents come into the cargo bay of the helicopter carrying the Ichthyosaur to get a closer look.
Well, it's been patient, waiting there.
Yeah, for probably quite a while.
Yeah, longer than that, probably.
It was really neat the way that they broke it loose, because it was in the side of the rock. They cut around it, and then they had it cut away, but they still had a few supports, a few pieces of the rock left, and then cut away that piece of the rock, got the pry bars in there, and it just slid off.
Not long after, the helicopters take off and head south to Fairbanks.
3 miles out to the northwest.
They land at Fort Wainwright late into the evening. The Ichthyosaur excavation has been a complete success. Roland Gangloff and Kevin May, along with the team, have established a solid bond with the soldiers, and they reflect on the concerns and success they had on this trip.
So far, we've had the best of all possible conditions and support, and we were ahead of schedule. And despite some naysayers, we got that big piece down without much of a problem. We had enough brawn to get it into the helicopter. And I think everybody went away on both sides, the Army and all of our crew went away with mutual respect and a lot of thanks on both sides too. So,
well, the relief set in when we got the jacket down the slope.
once we got it off the bluff, I knew we were going to be able to get it in the aircraft, whether, you know, we were able to drag it or winch it in. It didn't matter, but once it was in the helicopter, it was, I knew it was time to go home.
The supplies are offloaded and transferred to university vehicles.
This came in really handy. It's a great little thing.
This adventure is over for now. There is much more discovery that awaits in the wilds of Alaska's North Slope.